Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the week's biggest business developments, their context, their relevance and policy impact. I'm Govindraj, Ethiraj. Action in India's telecom sector is hotting up with Reliance Jio, a new player arriving on the scene with aggressive pricing strategies. Now, the launch of Jio has caused some friction between existing players who have to provide interconnect to Reliance consumers, or its calls across the network would not be completed. Now, the larger question is of demand and supply. How much scope for growth does the Indian telecom market really offer? Moreover, can the big telecom companies offer low rates and provide good service, or will there be compromises? And if so, where? What should we expect and anticipate from a regulatory point of view as well as a market growth perspective that will help us better understand the challenges and opportunities ahead? To discuss this, I'm joined by Ajay, Srinivasan, Director at CRISIL, and Shobhit, Khare of Inertia Wealth Creators. Thank you both for joining me. Ajay, let me begin with you. So, we're obviously entering another phase of hyper competition, which we've not seen for a while. Very broadly, what does this mean?
This very broadly means good news for consumers.
Okay.
We have had a hiatus for the last 2 to 3 years where competitive intensity was reducing, and now again it is going to be back at a fever pitch with Reliance Jio offering very aggressive tariffs. And quite clearly it appears that we are moving to an era of bundled plans where you have data and voice put together like you see abroad. And more bundled plans will become commonplace, particularly for mid and high-end consumers. For lower-end consumers, it will be a mix of voice as well as a bit of data. So we are anticipating the larger players also to follow suit and start cutting prices to match the tariffs or at least compete with Jio.
Right. So when you say bundle tariffs, it means what? That I pay, let's say, 2,000 rupees or 1,000 rupees, and in that I get everything together.
Absolutely.
And unlimited or limited? Obviously limited.
It will be limited, obviously. I mean, the lower you pay, the lesser you get. Say, for example, the Reliance plans offer some 4 GB at 500 rupees. So similarly, I think it will be something like you pay me so much rupees on a monthly basis, and you can do whatever you want. You can use so much level of data, you can use so much of voice. So we will move to those kind of trends, because quite clearly I think most of the consumers do not understand the plethora of tariff plans which are thrown at them. They would like to have simpler tariff plans. They would like to know what their monthly outgo will be, so that they can accordingly plan their telecom spend.
Right. So therefore, on the flip side, you're saying that so far telecom operators have not been as transparent or forthcoming with their tariffs as they should have been or could have been.
I would not say that they are not being transparent, but yes, I think the plethora of policy, the tariff options and plans available could end up confusing a customer as to what really the customer wants.
Right.
So now you may possibly have, say, a dozen odd plans around which consumers can choose based on their voice usage as well as data usage.
Right. And it's all fixed, and you know at the end of the month that this is the amount that I'm going to pay, and no
Absolutely.
more.
I think
no more. Okay.
Consumers like it that way.
Yeah.
And obviously I think from a telecom service provider perspective, it means that you will have to accordingly at least budget for that level of usage.
Right.
When you plan your network.
Right. Okay. So Shobhit, you've been a telecom analyst for many years. So tell us, how do you see this panning out? I mean, having seen previous battles, is this one of those battles which could help consumers, for all consumers that is, or could it create some, sort of distortions in the market which will help some and may not help others?
See, Govind, the key here to understand right now is that the market itself is going through an inflection right now. So we have something like a 14-15% 3G penetration right now out of a billion users. And normally that is an inflection point for any service to really, so you are looking at 50-60% penetration of mobile broadband. Now,
when you say you're looking at as potentially, you say?
Yes. Okay. Now, the key here is that still 70 to 75% of the industry revenue is coming from voice. So if you look at the industry, it's around 1,90,000 crore. Data would be close to 40-45,000 crore right now. But if you look at next 5 years, if the industry has to be 3 lakh crore, virtually all the 1 lakh crore rupees of incremental revenue is going to come from data.
Okay.
And it is possible that it could be more than 100% also.
Okay.
So in that perspective, I think it's very, very important that the whole business model has to be rethought. Even if you look at global trends now, for the first time, almost 15% of the global subscriber base is on LTE. And LTE, the key difference between 4G and 3G is that in 4G there is no circuit switch network. So the whole network is planned very differently.
Okay.
And I think that is where the operators who can play and who will be, able to transition to the new model where we are seeing voice free and all that. So that is where you know the changes.
Right. So you're saying voice is free, bundled packages are the way to go, and over time we're going to see far more data consumption than voice, at least in terms of what we'll pay for, and therefore what telecom operators will earn. Ajay?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at even the average 3G data usage, it is 3 times the quantum of a person who uses edge network. And my sense is 4G will be even higher than that because you get hooked onto it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So today, on an average data usage per data user on a monthly basis, about 400 MB, and with attractive tariff plans coming by the way, and more content being developed, and which is also very, very important. You have to have more content, including local language content. So as the content starts getting developed for the mobile platform, as you have more apps being developed to be able to reach out to more consumers, you will see that this data usage itself will grow exponentially. Our sense is that you could witness a 5-fold jump in aggregate data usage in the next 5 years, with tariff plans coming down, rates coming down, and more importantly, I think this will be the medium through which millions of Indian consumers or users will be able to access the internet for the first time, because PC penetration is very, very low in India.
Right. Okay. So let's look at one current problem that we are facing, because So Reliance has obviously has launched and is likely to get a lot of consumers who want to make calls to other people who may be on other networks like a Vodafone, Airtel, Idea, and the telecom operators, that's the existing telecom operators, are upset because they feel that there's going to be to use their words, tsunami of calls landing on their system, for which they are not currently, or maybe not be able to be compensated immediately. What's your sense? Is this an aberration or a temporary blip?
So, whenever a new operator comes in, there is always an issue which happens about interconnect.
Okay.
So we saw the same kind of battles happening when Indian wireless sector was really growing. There are various kind of interconnect issues. And I'm sure this is a teething problem which is there, and ultimately, the regulator has full jurisdiction about this, providing interconnect, plus, what rate has to be charged, etc. So I'm sure that, after the initial issues, it will get sorted out, and I see it as more of.
But is it a technology challenge at all? I mean, or an engineering challenge that, you have so many calls landing up and the systems won't be able to cope? I mean, is that a fair statement, or?
No, but see, Reliance Jio launch has been awaited for a long time. So I am sure, and the kind of scale, it was always known that it's going to be, they are going to target 100 million subscribers just initially, and let's see how many days it takes for them. So I think that more or less operators might have anticipated that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, and you're saying that the regulatory hand is strong here, and therefore that should get evened out.
It does stipulate that you have to provide enough points of interconnect within the period of 90 days.
Yeah.
So now there's a technical argument whether this is a commercial launch or that's a trial launch, and whether we need to provide so many pounds of interconnect for a trial launch.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the bone of contention. I think I agree with Shobhit. It's just a teething trouble. I think it will be sorted out very soon.
Right.
And you have to provide it.
You have no choice. Right.
One of the things which was not anticipated was that this free offer till December. So now there is also regulator also looks at predatory pricing. And obviously when you price at zero, I mean that is a question which the regulator needs to address. I think, and that is what the incumbent operators are also sort of demanding.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to the larger, in some ways, the larger point, right? So the industry has debt of about 4 lakh crores. Revenues about, you said 190 or is it 250,000 crores?
If you look at just the wireless market, it's close to 190.
190. Okay. So now so finally everything has to be paid for, right? And there's spectrum auctions, there's the revenue which is obviously limited or which may slow down depending on the shifts that we've been talking about. And there are all this debt that has to be repaid. So how is it going to happen?
See, quite clearly, I think as you see globally, this is going to settle down. Once the dust settles, you may have about maybe 4 to 5 operators. More than that is very difficult to see survival of operators. At a point in time in India, we had as many as 10-12 operators. Now that has come down slowly. There is some consolidation happening with Arcom and Arcel. And the market itself cannot accommodate more than say 4-5 players. And even in developed markets, the number 4 player in many instances struggles financially. So we'll have top 2 to 3 operators who are well off financially, the other players are struggling or just not able to cope. So we will have that kind of scenario in India as well. There will be further consolidation for sure, and you will see that ultimately there will be 3 to 4 operators who will corner the chunk of the subscriber base. In the short term, it will lead to a lot of heartburn for sure. For example, the spectrum auction now, because of Reliance becoming so aggressive, and given the kind of spectrum they have got to offer data services, it will force some of the incumbents to really stock up more on 4G spectrum, so that they are also able to offer a similar level of experience to their users.
Right.
In the short term, these tariff battles may help you get subscribers, but in the long term, it will be service quality along with tariffs which will actually determine who is going to be the winner.
Right, and Shobhit, let me put the same question to you. I mean, maybe perhaps you want to expand on that. So, as people go and, spend and attract through incentives and other ways, you could also, accumulate a lot of subscribers to whom you may not be able to provide the service that you want or they want, or you may attract them from other operators. And again, it's going to create a period where perhaps there'll be a lot of jostling.
Yes, so I think the main point is that the subscriber experience on data is what is going to matter. So that is the new paradigm. And if you have, now you need two things. One is that you have to be positioned in the market like that I am a high quality data service provider. Second is you need to have adequate spectrum, data spectrum, and then a lot of tower fiberization. And that is when I think if those are the building blocks which are required for any operator to really be successful. And as far as the industry debt is concerned, I think for the first time in many years right now the market shares are very fluid. We don't know who is going to win. And whenever that kind of situation happens, when a new market is sort of a new market paradigm is there, I think the focus completely starts shifting from near-term profitability to long-term market share build. And I think that is the game which will be played in the next 2 years.
And that's also dangerous in some ways because people will obviously outspend each other or try and outspend each other.
I really look at from capital market perspective. I mean, profitability comes afterwards. In a new paradigm, first you look at subscriber base, market share, and anyone who is really focused on the data market, that is how I think they will be positioned. Right.
Well, that's a good note to end on. We run out of time. Thank you both for joining me. Well, we need to go in for a break. Coming up on the other side, the United Payments interface. Is that going to change the face of financial inclusion? Stay with us. Welcome back to Policy Watch. The United Payments Interface, or UPI, has been launched a few weeks ago, and the response from all accounts has been strong. What it means is that you can download an app on your smartphone from your bank and transfer funds by just using a mobile number or a mail ID. Now, the UPI has recorded about 1.75 lakh users since its launch last week, the National Payments Corporation of India told the Financial Express, adding that they see between 3 to 5 million active users in the next 6 months. Over 16 banks have launched their apps on Google Play Store and more are joining. Now, the larger question is, what are the prospects for UPI and how could it change our lives, and will it drive India's larger focus on inclusive banking and outreach? To discuss this, I'm joined by Rishi Gupta, Managing Director and CEO of FINO PayTech, and Deepak Sharma, Chief Digital Officer of Kotak Mahindra Bank. So, Deepak, let me start by asking you, the UPI has been launched. There has been a fair amount of interest already generated. You are yet to launch in a few weeks, and I understand that you're still working out on your security and performance parameters. What's the sense that you've got so far?
I think there's a lot of excitement about UPI to start with, I would say, because a lot of people are asking us, when is Kotak going to be on UPI? So I could sense that there is a fair amount of excitement. A build-up is already there. I think what we are going to see over a period of probably next 6 to 10 weeks is how this build-up translates into people downloading the apps. And then thereafter, I think the real proof would be how they start using it. Like any new technology, I think there are initial adopters who are pretty excited with whatever new comes up. And then there are those people who keep watching those initial adopters to say, let them go and try it out.
And that's an important point. So do you feel that UPI is something that, let's say, people who are more technologically savvy will adopt? Because that's not the objective. The objective is to make it really mass and widely held or used.
Yeah, but I would say, like for any technology that you see, I mean, even when mobile banking came or internet banking or ATMs came, right? People started, a lot of them were quite skeptical about putting a card in the machine and then say waiting for the cash to come. So I think it's a journey because obviously.
So, but you're relating it to that. I mean, you're saying, okay, it's somewhat like a ATM familiarity, which is
I would say
the digital equivalent.
Anything which is new. I think there are people who will like to get somebody to experiment before they say, hey, it makes sense. And I think typical for a network effect, which is what UPI provides, I think once there are enough and more people using it to get the critical mass, I think then the mass adoption will be like a hockey stick curve.
Right. And how are you going to be, or how do you plan to be spreading awareness of this for your constituents and your depositors and so on?
So I think the way we look at Kotak is it's not as much about UPI because I think UPI or IMPS or RTGS, I think NSCH, India has a large pool of payment ecosystem platform. I think what it does for the customer is what they are more interested in. So can you make my life simple and seamless? It doesn't matter what underlying platform do I use. So I think we are detaching that too. Rather than getting too much hyped about UPI, which as a platform we are all very excited, is to convert this into use cases to say now you can pay your milkman or a newspaper wala. Instead of going door to door asking for 300 rupee or 250 rupee at the end of the month, he can just send you the bill and he can fetch money from you.
Right, and that's a very critical point, right? So merchants, individual payments, payment to peer-to-peer payments. Is that something that it always seemed like a holy grail in India, right? In terms of payments and payments ecosystem.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest benefit I see of UPI is in India you have the pretty large unorganized sector here today. And I think that is where the cash uses was pretty high. Because the idea is while you want to reduce cash, but what is the alternate that you are providing them to give a much seamless kind of an experience? Now, I think that's what UPI will provide as you start building more and more of such cases. To say that if you have to pay a milkman, a newspaper, a laundry guy, a grocer, now all of them today end up collecting cash and then for them that's where the friction starts.
And from your own experience in the world of digital and finance, do you see that adoption happening? Do you see the newspaper wala, the milkman? It's not that they are not knowledgeable about it. It's perhaps a more cultural resistance to shift. It's also a shift from cash to let's say digital that we're talking about.
I think if we are solving their problem, they'll love to. Look at what's happening to WhatsApp, right?
Okay.
I think today a social media messaging platform people have started using. I think that's how you look at a cab guy who today probably uses a Uber or a Ola app. It's so much easy for them. I mean, I was asking somebody, an auto guy in Bangalore some time back, and he uses one of these apps. He said it's pretty simple. I mean, there's nothing more a rocket science if you can make the
and they appreciate the convenience of payments, bank accounts, the whole gamut of
everybody sees the benefit that if you have payments coming into your bank account, you can have a credit history basis that you can probably go and take money, borrow money, because at the end of it has its own benefit once it comes into the banking system.
Right, that sounds really encouraging. So last question, so in a year from now, where do you think this could be?
I definitely would say that we will see a pretty strong adoption vis-a-vis any other payment ecosystem that we have today.
Okay.
Because it's simple, it's human, it's ubiquitous. The only benefit, or I would say it will have a multiplier effect, is that it's not just banks, but everybody around it, merchants, fintech players who are developing new cases. We keep working together to build it as a partnership to solve this entire cash and the payment friction issue in India.
Right. So UPI is a way of life. Payments through digital sort of platforms, a way of life is what you're saying.
Yes.
And at the really retail level. I mean, not
it's
as
a
opposed
great
to
initiative. I think we all have to make it work.
Right. Rishi, let me ask you a larger question first, and then I'll come back to UPI specifically. Where do we stand in terms of the overall financial inclusion efforts that this country has been actively pursuing for the last couple of years?
See, I would say the launch of Aadhaar and the entire integration of Aadhaar in the ecosystem and the Jan Dhan Yojana has really boosted the financial inclusion program of the country. Till about 4 years back, we were all looking at financial inclusion as one of the government regulated piece. But now when we look at financial inclusion, it has really taken off. The entire DBT program has further given the boost to the financial inclusion program. The credit offtake has already started increasing on this. In my own company, I have started seeing that the cash disbursement on the DBT program has gone up by 2-3 times in the last 6 months. So the entire ecosystem which we wanted to create about a few years back with Aadhaar, smartphones, KYC, and the entire Jandan 200 million accounts has started to give fruits to the entire financial inclusion as a system. So what we see is that now the leap has to be further in terms of how do we make it. So we have done the wide program. Now we have to go and do much deeper integration in the system. So that is where the entire payments bank, small finance bank will further help the financial inclusion program, because they will go into the real deep parts of the country and bring this entire 200 million and more accounts to be transacting on multiple products. So I would say in the last few years, the growth has been really phenomenal on the financial inclusion side. We need to keep adding more products to it, so that the depth can go further and further.
Right. So financial inclusion was about expanding the reach. It was about bringing people who are unbanked into the banking system. Now, UPI is a way of actually making people who are not willing to use cash to actually use it, isn't it? Isn't it a combination of both in some ways?
So what is happening is that UPI currently, and the plan is that it has been launched on the Android. It's still to be launched on the other platforms. It is more of smartphone based application. So what I see as a system, it's a game changer. The disruption we'll have to see over the next few months and years to come. Very early days, as you said, 1.75 lakhs accounts have been opened on UPI till now, and 3.5 to 5 million accounts will get opened in the next few months. So what it's going to do is, I see two big movement happening on the UPI side. One is on the P2P side. I see more and more people transacting who have already into a smartphone, a bank account. And secondly, the bigger, I would say, the disruption which is going to happen is on the P2M side, where people will start using this as a means to pay the merchants, and that is where the biggest disruption will happen. That is where the cash actually will move out. So right now also, if you look at the P2P business, to some extent is being catered through the banks or the wallet business, but the P2M is being catered directly through the POS machines, and it only covers the top end of the merchants. As you go deeper to our local kirana shops, our local merchants, they still handle in cash. So the entire cash piece will go away once we have the entire UPI ecosystem getting created, where we don't need to keep a POS machine, and those 10 million POS machines which are there can cater to the debit card, credit card environment, and the local merchants can be catered through a UPI kind of environment. It will take a few years to happen, but if we move in that direction, I think to a large extent we can remove the cash which is going around in the country.
Right. So Rishi, if you going by your own experience, what's your sense of this transition? As you know, how do people move from, let's say, from being cash entirely based, I mean, running a cash world or a cash life, to a non-cash life? How do they adopt technology? I mean, if one is trying to understand how fast this could go, and particularly with the people we wanted to go, what are the other parallels or proxies that we could look at?
As far as UPI is concerned, and we are trying to answer two questions. As far as one is UPI, the second is the cash economy becoming a digital economy. Even in US, after so many years, still digital economy is about 35%, 65% is being handled through cash. So one should not assume that it will be either one of the two. It will be both. The question is, right now India has 10% cash, 10% digital and 90% cash. Whether we can take it to 25% and above is something which has to be seen. So it's not going to be either cash or either digital. Both the worlds, physical and digital world, will have to coexist. As far as UPI is concerned, the UPI business is currently only on smartphones. So the smartphone penetration, as it keeps on going up every year, and we are seeing 75 million people adding every year on smartphones. So it will take maybe another 3-4 years where we reach about a 500 million mark. We supposedly will overtake US in this year on smartphones, and maybe China will reach China in the next 4-5 years, where they have 600 million smartphones. We will also reach that number in the next 5-6 years. So once that penetration really becomes big, is the time when the entire disruption on the UPI you will see, from not only from the bottom of the pyramid or the top end of the pyramid to the bottom end of the pyramid. So disruption on UPI will take some time, till the time the smartphones penetration keeps on happening. On the cash piece, I personally feel that the disruption is it's already started. We have started seeing people moving to mobile banking. In fact, in an article a few weeks back, last week, where they said the national bandh which happened did not disrupt the banking, because most of the banking was happening on mobile and ATM and other ways. So digitization in banking has already started to a large extent. Now, how much of the transactions we can move to digital ecosystem is where the merchant play will start happening, and that is where I think UPI plays a bigger role, because that is where the people will actually started moving from cash to digital. And if the interchange also comes down, then the merchant also will be happy, because the cash ecosystem will disappear. The customers don't need to keep that much money with them, and the merchant can take the money through the UPI platform. I think that will be the game changer, but it will take a few years to happen till the awareness really builds up. And for that we need to do a lot of media, we need to do a lot of I would say awareness campaigns have to be done, and the government is already coming up with steps to incentivize people to move to digital platforms. So I would say that we are moving in the right direction. It's not going to happen overnight.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Deepak, for joining us. That's all we have time for on Policy Watch this week. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.